Hello, good day to you. Rob McComas here to discuss the presidents and their primary strategies during Vietnam. Um, Now, I don't want to come off as being too cynical or too critical of any of the presidents uh, and their actions during Vietnam. In fact, I want to make three arguments before I get into the strategies about all the presidents during Vietnam before I start talking about the policies of those presidents, starting with Eisenhower and going all the way through Nixon. And I believe that these arguments that I'm going to state hold true for all of them. The first one being that um, those presidents in office truly believed that communism was a real threat. They believed it was very real, and they feared not only communism taking over, but the pressure of communism and what that could do throughout Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. So what they saw going on in Southeast Asia, they felt that they had to address all of them. And I will argue that none of these presidents were willing to accept defeat on their watch. They did not want that to happen, and that's why Vietnam continued for the lengthy period of time that it did. Simply put, they all wanted to claim a solid U.S. victory. And we can argue whether America actually won the war or not. A solid U.S. victory, I don't think did happen, but certainly our brave men and women, I think they can claim victory, and I think they did stop the spread of communism. And this last one kind of bothers me, but I'm going to make the argument anyway. I feel that they put their political careers and their own personal interest and what they could do and be seen as above the welfare of the troops. And I truly believe that they put themselves above America's best interest a little bit. I will argue that point, and that's just how I feel when you look at the facts on Vietnam. Um, that said, Time Magazine on Time.com said, uh, obviously, after the uh, overcoming his early hesitation, Lyndon Johnson will not allow the U.S. troops to be pushed out of Vietnam. And that attitude could be taken toward all of those presidents. Um, let's look at Eisenhower, starting with Eisenhower. He truly feared, as I said, that spread of communism throughout Southeast Asia. Now, like I said, as much as he feared the actual spread of communism, it's my belief that it was the influence of communism and how they could influence other nations, even if they did not directly take over with communism. And they believe America had to act from stopping that to actually happen. Um, on History.com, they analyzed Eisenhower's famous domino theory speech, where Eisenhower made the statement, you have broader considerations that might follow what you would call the falling domino principle. In other words, if communist China could take over Vietnam, Laos, or Cambodia for that matter, once when it started to spread, very hard to stop if you did not nip it in the bud. And I think that's what Eisenhower was saying here. So Eisenhower came up with and his administration came up with the principle to deal with that threat in Southeast Asia with what was called the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, or SEATO, SEATO, and he wanted to use that to stop communist influence, but really, that wasn't what that was about. That was how do I put this? That was put in place to set up force in the South to deal with the communists in the North. And of course, the Republic of Vietnam came in 1965 with Diem as president, and that's how Eisenhower got the ball rolling there, and that's how he wanted to deal with it. Then John F. Kennedy, who narrowly won the election, as you pointed out in your lecture. And, I never realized how close that election was until I looked at the map. And once when I looked at the map, I was truly shocked at how close that election was. And, but back on topic, Kennedy gets into office and he pledges a lot of support for Diem in Vietnam. So he sends a lot of advisors in and equipment and so forth. But the term, what bothers me there is the term advisors. For anyone that's ever served in uniform, if you're in a war situation and you're called an advisor, it's really a slap in the face. Really is. You're not given your due credit as a soldier, airman, seaman, soldier, whatever the case may be. If you're called an advisor, putting your life on the line, slap in the face. But oddly enough, before his own assassination, though, Kennedy set in place a coup to overthrow Diem. And so we have all this equipment set in place. We have all these advisors over there. And basically we're prepped for all-out war. And then the Kennedy assassination happens. And that brings us to Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, Johnson, he would use the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and which I think you did a fabulous job pointing out how that Gulf of Tonkin resolution was used for all intents and purposes to engage us in war. First troops hit the ground in 1965, and that is when Johnson would authorize Operation Rolling Thunder. Now, the Huffington Post called that a gradual and sustained U.S. bombing effort. And that was conducted by the U.S. 2nd Air Division. It was also a huge failure. And the reason it was a huge failure is when those planes would bomb and invade, they would drop a lot of ammunition, and the North knew if they could just hunker down and survive that particular role, if you will, and make it past that segment of bombing, well, they could just disappear back into the jungle. So that said, that's a huge mistake, and that Operation Rolling Thunder was a failure. And Johnson also had to deal with the Malay Massacre. And certainly, that was a tragedy in itself. On April 1965, he talked about the commitment. Johnson talked about the commitment of winning the war with his peace without conquest speech. And what he said there was, we are there because great stakes are in the balance. We will not withdraw. So, a lot of men losing their lives, basically there to stay the course, if you will. And that continued throughout his presidency. Now, when Nixon gets in office, and Nixon was there from 1969 to 1974, but when he gets in office, what made his presidency throughout Vietnam and his strategy was Vietnamization. And he started that in 1969, and he escalated the war in Vietnam. And of course, he had secret operations going on that may or may not have been so secret going on in Laos and Cambodia. And of course, the goal there was to stop that communist influence from spreading further. And one of his best political moves, in my opinion, was the Christmas bombing in '72. This actually forced the peace talks going forward. And I believe this led directly to those Paris Peace Accords, where, in my view, I would argue that for all intents and purposes, this is what took America eventually out of the war. So a long struggle for America, and for the next president, Ford. He made it clear that in America's eyes, in America's eyes, the war was over, even though troubled times still existed. And it was a long struggle for America throughout Vietnam. But hey, there's so much more that could be said, so much more. And I hope I did a decent job of presenting what I actually presented. It was a joy doing it. It was a joy doing the research behind it. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed bringing this to you. God bless you and Merry Christmas.